do you think it's done a good job of improving educational standards for kids in this country?
No, mostly no. But I think the proper tool of a federal government saying, hey, you have to teach truths, even if that local community doesn't necessarily want to. Like the example that I kind of thought of, because I was talking to someone about this, I thought of like a coal mining town. In that town, it might be the most valuable thing to teach about mining, to teach about that type of trade, versus if you live in New York City, you're going to be learning a lot more of like markets and just overall higher education. And I think that that's unfair to the people who are born into that area, just because that area needs that economic development.
So, fair question. So, what you're saying is, from a more conservative slant, probably, that a federal Department of Education that actually mandates the right things from the top down.
Yes.
Sounds great. Let me tell you why A, that won't happen, and why B, I think that's a bad idea. Okay. So, even though it sounds conceptually right, A, anything that starts in D.C. with a good intention will be taken over by the cancer, the woke tumor and the woke cancer. It metastasizes and envelops the entire thing, even if it has a really good intent. I'll give you a great example. We have this huge fight right now in the Department of Defense trying to get rid of all the woke stuff in the Marines and the Air Force. If we can't keep the Marines from becoming woke, we have no chance of the Department of Education ever not becoming in that way.
Fair enough, yeah.
And just by the actual fiber of what education is, more people on the left gravitate into that space. The biggest problem with education, which is why we should get rid of the Department of Education, is it's not the Department of Education, it's the Department of Administrators. And this is what's very important. This is not a war on teachers. There are 11 million people in America that are in government, that are in jobs, in government, taxpayer funded, in education. If you were to guess, how many would you say are teachers?
30%?
Yeah, so that's almost correct. You're right.
Okay.
So about 7 million, about 6.7 million of the 11 million are administrators. And the people, like, most of our education money goes towards paper pushers, career counselors, people that fill in paperwork unnecessarily. We're not even supporting the teachers on the front line. So that's the biggest problem, is we have become an administrative heavy education model. And what has that meant for our kids? Since the advent of Department of Education, as you agree, standards have gone down, literacy has gone down, math and reading has gone down. In fact, most kids in public education, I want you guys to think about this, in high school, have not read an entire book cover to cover.
Yeah.
Do you guys agree with that? Yeah. And I know that when parents hear that, it's so shocking. Most kids, when they are by a junior or senior in school, have not read, they'll read snippets. You guys know that. They have readers, right? A chapter of this. They have not read an entire book cover to cover. Let me go to my second argument why I think it's a bad idea. I don't think it's constitutional or in the role of government to get involved in the most intimate thing, which is education. And this is why. I think our view of education is wrong. You guys look at education probably because you've been taught as just, hey, get here so you can get a job. In the ideal sense, education should be about the growth of the soul and should be about the nurturing of good citizens, which is completely different than just career preparation. The view I have of education, which is what the founders had, which only very few people have, is that you guys should be here to read really old good books, to understand ancient philosophy, to become a well-rounded citizen of what is good, true, and beautiful, and then you could do any job once you graduate. That the hyper-specialization of our education system has been dreadful. But let me get to the Constitution, and I'd love to get your response. Constitutionally, I think we have made too many exceptions of the government should do this, the government should do that. If we look at Article 1, Section 8 of the U.S. Constitution, it enumerates 17 things that government can do. Education federally is not one of them. And it doesn't even do it well. And I think it's led to this bloat of federal agencies that shouldn't exist. And so finally, let's go back to that coal miner example. That's a really good example in one way. But at the other way, we should not impose on certain communities what values they should learn or not learn. And usually what happens is, we know, it's left-wing ideology that then gets imposed on local Christian communities or conservative communities that might have a different view. So what is your opinion on all that?
I think that I feel like at this point there's so many different I feel like there's so many different government programs that don't adhere to the Constitution, at least not in a literal sense. Yes. Like, I'm not saying they're constitutionally illegal, but
I would say they almost are.
That is definitely an argument. But I do think that there is certain educational standards that need to be upheld. I just don't know the proper way to do that.
Great. So my suggestion is we don't have to think too deeply about it. Is we already know what that looks like, which is that the states should run the education as they see fit. Scores, we've gone down. We're like 26th now in education, yet we're spending $250 billion a year on the federal Department of Education, mostly on administrative paperwork. So I think we need to empower more families. And the final thing I'll say is school choice, allowing parents to be able to send their and by the way, Florida has one of the most robust school choice programs in the country, and it works because competition education is a good thing. Final point, yes.
Yeah, I know. My sister actually works at a Montessori school, and so I'm very on board with like school choice. But I think the first-party governmental schools, in my opinion, should have a certain level of standard. Just because I moved from Illinois to here,
District 214,
and it wasn't a perfect school district. So I had my fair share of issues there.
Very well funded at Thomas.
It's very well funded. Yes.
And let me just kind of and then we'll go to the next question. It's well funded for a reason because of very, very high taxes.